Hi there, and welcome to another video of Copycat with Cables. My name is Mark, my handle on the forums is Andro, and today I'll be showing you how to recreate something like this. I was browsing around Twitter, following some of the generative artists that are there, and I saw this really cool piece, and it really just struck me as something really simple, but with like a really powerful, striking design. So this has been created by Junkiyoshi. Hope I pronounced his name correctly there. I'll provide a link to his Twitter page and to his website in the video, under the video and in the patches. A lot of cool stuff there that you should check out. So we're going to attempt to recreate this today in Copycat with Cables. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to press escape. I'm going to create a main loop. I'm now going to make a sequence op. And from this, I'm now going to pull out an image compose. And then I'm going to grab one of our latest ops, Shapes 2D. It allows you to generate different 2D shapes to use as a texture. I'm going to pull this out from here, and I'm going to make it full screen, rectangle. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to plug that in there. So let's first of all put the color on white. And then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to pick the shape box. I'm going to put the width on 0.2, and the height on 0.1 for now. So I want this to scroll, and after I've made it scroll, I'm going to map it to a cylinder. And then I'm going to use a repeat op to recreate what we saw. That's it in its most basic form. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to type in scroll, and if I move Y here, as you can see, I can scroll the texture. So let's pull this out, grab a timer op. It's going too fast, put it on 0.25. Great, so we've got a scrolling box. It went really nice and quick. So now I'm just going to disconnect this. I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to make a render to texture because I want to get a 3D mesh and the scene that it's in, and I want to convert that into an actual texture. And I'm going to grab a clear color op. I want to just plug the output of this into there. Grab the clear color op, click this, and I'm just going to put it on a slightly different color. Great. Now I'm going to add a transform view op over here. And then I'm going to add an orbit controls because I want to be able to control and rotate the scene with my mouse. And then I'm going to add a basic material because I need to apply this texture to a shape. And now I'm going to grab a transform because I'm going to need to move the shape later. And then I'm going to add the cylinder op. And there's the cylinder. So because we're using basic material, it has no shading or lighting. It's just like one color. So first of all, let's make it white. And if we click on the cylinder now and I turn it a bit, we're going to turn off caps. And that means we're removing like the top and the bottom part, as you can see. And if I change the segments amount, you can see it kind of like becomes low poly to high poly. So I want to cut open cube. So I put it on 4, like this. Hopefully that's clear to everybody. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this material here, this texture, and I'm going to apply it to the material, but I'm going to plug it into the opacity right here. And look at what we got right there. And now something I want to point out is you can see that it looks a little bit broken because what's happening is the inside of the geometry is kind of getting in the way of us seeing what we need to. So we go to basic material. It's got a really nice option for this. And you just click discard transparent pixels. And now when you do that, it's not broken anymore. It's complete the whole time, no matter which angle that you're looking at it from. So this is the basic framework for what we want to do. I'm going to go to Shapes 2D, and I'm going to increase the height, say to 0.5, that's too much, 0.3, so I get this kind of thing happening. So we're already pretty close to what we need to set up here. So right now, I'm going to say to myself, I want to be able to create more instances of this because in the original video there's like maybe 8 or 16 of these shapes. So I'm going to click here in between, and I'm going to type in repeat. And this will trigger all ops below an X amount of times. So click add. And let's put this number on 8. So there's actually 8 cylinders with 8 materials there, but you don't see a difference because they're all in exactly the same position and they're all doing exactly the same thing. So let's use a really cool thing with repeat. So it's got an index out for each trigger, for each iteration that's coming out. Press F to see flow mode. You can see it's really busy here. So it's like triggering 8 times per frame. So this index number we can use to do a lot of things with. So first of all, let's pull that out, grab a multiply, and let's plug it into transform, rotate X. And now let's crank up this multiply and look at what happens there. It's kind of like coming out. So each index has a different rotation. So it's like, let's put it on just say 20 for now. So it's 0 times 20 for the first iteration, 1 times 20, 2 times 20, 3 times 20. So we could replicate this. We could get the repeat again, plug it into a multiply, and now plug it into Y. As you can see, we're starting to get some really interesting looking patterns. Let me just make the scene a little bit bigger with transform view scale, so it's a little bit easier to look at. But as we can see, everything's kind of moving at the same time, which makes it really difficult to see things. And in the original video, the start and end point of each of these moving lines was different. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here, and we're going to grab the repeat index, and we're going to plug that into a random numbers op. What does this mean? We're going to get a different random number for each index. If we give it 0, we get that random number. If we pass in 1, we get a different one, and so on. So let's now get this random number output, and we're going to plug it into texture offset Y. We're going to multiply this by a big number. I'm just going to start turning it up. And as you can see, they're all now moving at a different point. So what's happening is the texture that's coming out of here for each shape, the offset where it is on the Y position is different. Now it's still a little bit difficult to see. So I'm going to turn down that width a little bit more. And this makes it a little bit easier to see what's happening there. So we're already getting pretty close to what we saw in the original video. We could click the random numbers here and like try out different seeds until we get something that we're happy with. So let's zoom out a little touch and let's move this down. So the key here, if you're not following this, is there's like everything underneath this is being triggered 8 times, and each index number is being used to make something different happen. Okay, so now I want each of these to have a different color. So let's grab the HSB to RGB up. Okay, I'm going to just zoom in a little touch again. I'm going to plug the red into red here, green into green, blue into blue. And this now means that with one number, the hue, I can change the color. Okay, and the trick to this is we want to just get one number from random numbers, and we want to use that to generate a different color for each shape. So we're just going to plug it into hue and watch what happens. We now get a different color with everything. This is great. So imagine you'd want a little bit more artistic control. You click here in between, you type in map range. It maps one value range into another. So random numbers output 0 to 1. So we click here on map range, old min 0, old max 1. And now we could say, I want it to go from 0.25 to 0.5. And as you can see, I now get these like hues of color. So I can now turn this up, and now we're kind of like staying within a color range. So the map range up is a really good way to kind of like get that color control that you want to have, instead of it just being like seemingly random. So like 0 to 1 can just be anything. 0.4 to 0.8 gives like a more of a palette. So I'm going to put it like this. I just want it to be a little bit obvious today. So we're already pretty close to this. So let's say I want to rotate everything now. I could plug a timer into transform view. I could also just plug it into here. And let's turn that up. And as you can see, we're now rotating each of the instances from the repeat on this x-axis. I could now plug this into here, or use a different timer, and then we're rotating them on X and Y. So we're already pretty close to the look in the original video from the artist. We could also do a little trick here now where we could pull out the repeat index, put it on into a multiply, and this we could now plug into a scale. And let's put that on 1. And now I'm pretty close up, so I'm going to turn the scale down to something smaller, like this. And now by using this multiply number, I could make them seem smaller or bigger depending on each index number that's coming out. So there's a lot of potential to play around here and get a lot of wildly different looks. You've just got to kind of look at what works for you. So this still looks okay. I'm gonna pump up the clear color so it's a little bit brighter. And the one thing I'm missing right now is like some depth. So there's a really cool trick for this. So I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna make a kind of post-processing chain. So I'm gonna grab the image compose up. I'm gonna disconnect this. Now I'm going to grab draw image, and I'm going to plug this into image. I'm going to get the output from image compose and plug it in there. And now I just want to add some ambient occlusion. So I grab the SSAO2 up, and I add it. And right now I'm just going to pause the timer, because otherwise this can be pretty difficult to see. So let's just like disable it all. And I want to get some brighter colors here with the map range. So let's just move that up here a little bit. It's kind of tricky to get right. This looks okay. So I'm going to go to the SSAO2. I'm going to put the samples on 3, AO radius on 1, clamp on this. And now I kind of want to zoom in. And if we disable this, it's kind of tricky to get right at the beginning. There we go. I have to plug in the depth texture. Great, there we go. So as you can see, we've now got this kind of like depth being added, ambient occlusion. So where two edges meet, we get darker lines. So if I disable this now, as you can see, the image is really different. I can turn up the luminance influence so the image doesn't get darker. Let's turn those timers back on. Let's just actually slow it all down a little touch because it's going pretty quick. It's pretty difficult to follow. Okay, so as you can see, if I'm going to bypass the ambient occlusion, it's all quite flat. It doesn't look like there's any real shading. And by getting the depth texture and then using that to power the ambient occlusion up, we get this. I could now go to repeat. I could put this on 16. Zoom out a little touch. We could put the scale just on 1. And as you can see, they're going from bigger to smaller. So there's an awful lot of stuff that we can do here. Let me just disconnect the scale for now. And let's zoom back in. And I'm just trying to show you that that scale is changing the size of everything. And if we don't do that, then they're all on like exactly the same location, as you can see. And there's a little bit of clashing there with what's going on. So let's just plug this guy back in. Scale, transform view, scale it down a little bit. So without making an attempt to get exactly the same colors, this was our copycat with cables today. There's a lot of parameters here that you can tweak and a huge amount of looks that you can get out of this patch. So I hope this video has been educational and informative. If you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them under the video below or to post them on the forums. Thanks for watching and have a good one. Bye.